Friends, in the last video in English on Manavendranath Roy, popularly known as M.N. Roy, we talked about his life and work. In this second video in English, we will talk further about the owner of a sharp mind and extraordinary mental prowess, the great revolutionary freedom fighter, philosopher, and writer M.N. Roy. I am Mahipal Singh from Indian Renaissance Institute, and you are watching our second video in English on the YouTube platform. In the last video, we discussed that M.N. Roy was born as Narendranath Bhattacharya in a village called Arbelia in the 24 Pargana district in West Bengal on 21st March 1887 in a Brahmin family, and his father was a priest in a local school. In 1898, their family shifted to Kodalia, where he joined Hari Navi Anglo-Sanskrit school, where his father was a teacher. He studied in that school till 1925, till the age of 18. But when the proposal of division of Bengal came up in 1905, he jumped into the movement against that proposal. As a result, he was expelled from the school after 10th class. Then he went to Calcutta along with Hari Kumar Chakravarti, and there both of them became members of the Anushilan Samiti, which was engaged in the freedom movement of India. During that period, as a student, he joined the National College under Sri Aurobindo. Later on, he joined Bengal Technical Institute, which has now become Jadavpur University, and studied engineering and chemistry there. During the same period, in order to collect money for the Anushilan Samiti, he did in a political dacoity on 6th of December 1907. However, he was released on bail. During the hearing of the case between 1910 and 11, the case was named as Howrah Shivpur case. He came into close contact with Jatinder Mukherjee, who was also his political mentor, also known as Bagha Jatin. Roy was sentenced to 20 months of imprisonment in that case. In August 14, World War first began, and on the appeal of Indian revolutionaries living in Berlin, by the end of the year, the German government agreed to provide arms to them to launch an armed revolution against the British government. Roy was given the responsibility of procuring those arms by the Anushilan Samiti. In 1940, he went to Java and spent about 2 months without practically any money. But that attempt was not successful. So early in 1915, Roy again left the country in search of those arms, traveling through Java, Japan, China, Sumatra, Philippines, West Indies, San Francisco in the US, and later also to New York and Mexico. However, the offer of the German government did not materialize as it was a hoax. In this respect, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was successful in 1943 during the Second World War when he succeeded in procuring the help of Japan, an ally of German dictator Adolf Hitler, who had invaded the Allied forces of Britain, America, etc., to win them over and to establish his rule all over the world. Roy was not successful in that manner. After traveling in smaller ships and boats in very difficult circumstances, he at last reached San Francisco after crossing the Pacific as a Christian priest in the summer of 1916. After a year and a half, who was going, that means that priest was going uh, to Paris to study theology. He reached Palo Alto, the seat of the University of Stanford, uh, and there met Dhangopal Mukherjee, younger brother of his friend Jadu Gopal. On his advice, he changed his name to M.N. Roy. After a couple of months on the West Coast, he went to the city of New York. He had come to America as an emissary of revolutionary nationalism with the intention of going to Germany in search of arms. Uh, the last half year of American neutrality in the First World War was a trying time for the Indian patriots who had gone to that land of liberty to enlist sympathy and support for their cause. Previously, they had carried on anti British propaganda with a good deal of encouragement from various circles of American public. Exiles like Lala Lajpat Roy had free access to the liberal press and platform, but most of them had not been very discriminating in seeking support and alliance. The result was that Indian nationalist propaganda got mixed up with German propaganda and came to be regarded as violation of American neutrality. But after winning the 1916 election, within half a year, President Wilson abandoned neutrality. Almost overnight, Indian nationalists in America completely forfeited American sympathy. They were suspected as German agents and arrested en masse and tried immediately after the USA joined the war. In February 1917, the absolute Russian monarchy was overthrown and a liberal democratic government was installed there. Roy escaped imprisonment by fleeing to Mexico, otherwise, he would have been caught and imprisoned. Roy had no acquaintances or links in Mexico, but he was able to get an introductory letter from the president of Stanford University, Sir David Starr Jordan, to General Alvarado, who was the governor of the state of Yucatan, where he was said to have established socialist economy. Roy landed in the city of Mexico, but from there, Yucatan City was almost 1,000 miles away and there was no railway link. The only route available was through the sea, so he had to stay at the Mexico City for the time being. He was also short of money, but luckily, two Germans whom he had met earlier in Java happened to come there. After meeting them, He was able to impress them, and they, although they could not help him in procuring arms from Germany with the help of Indian Revolutionary Committee in Berlin, however, they were able to help him with 10,000 Mexican pesos. And after some time, again, they were able to arrange for him 50,000 Mexican pesos and 50,000 US dollars. That was indeed a very big help to him, who was almost penniless at that time. In the meantime, Roy came into contact with members of the Socialist Party of Mexico, which also ran a newspaper. Roy started writing for it. That brought him closer to the party members. The president of Mexico was closely associated with the party and the newspaper. Thus, Roy also came closer to President Carranza. Later, Roy became the General Secretary of the Mexican Socialist Party. At that time, Michael Borodin, a very close friend of and associate of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin of Russia, heard about his reputation and came there incognito and met Roy. In fact, his condition financially was very bad. He had traveled to the US as part of a Russian business delegation. There, the group had fallen into financial difficulties. Roy helped him by sending 10,000 US dollars to the delegation and also 500 US dollars to Mrs. Borodin, who was still in the US. Borodin was highly impressed uh, with, his, with him because of his views and also for the help that he had given to him and his delegation. He informed Lenin about all this. Some friends in the Socialist Party of Mexico suggested that Roy should call an extraordinary conference of the party to discuss the issues in hand and to formulate the future strategy of the party. In 1919, he called that conference. Another purpose was to introduce Michael Borodin to his party colleagues. In this conference, it was decided to change the name of the party to the Communist Party of Mexico. This decision was taken in view of the success of the Russian Revolution in 1917. Thus, the Communist Party of Mexico became the first communist party out of Russia, and M.N. Roy became its founder. In Mexico, soon anti-American sentiment ran high in the Mexico City as a result of American interference in its internal affairs when the government banned export of petroleum products. Roy was able to persuade many people to join Socialist Party so that together they could persuade the government to take sympathetic attitude towards the immediate economic demands of the working class. A friend advised him to engage a teacher to teach him the local language Spanish so that he could work better. While in Mexico, a socialist party leader, Plutarco alias Calas, was appointed labor minister, and Roy had to bear the additional responsibility of drafting the labor bill on his request. Now, that again brought him closer to the president and the ruling party. Ultimately, on the invitation of the Russian Communist Party, Roy, along with Evelyn Trent Roy, who had met him there and started working with him, left Mexico in November 1919 after staying there for 2 years and a half. Now, his stay in Mexico was very significant. And about his stay in Mexico City, Roy wrote in the book Memoirs, Mexico was the land of my rebirth. It was during my stay in Mexico that the new vision became clear and the dissatisfaction with a sterile past was replaced by a conviction to guide me in a more promising future. I acquired a new outlook on life. There was a revolution in my mind, a philosophical revolution which knew no finality. I left the land of rebirth an intellectually free man, though with a new faith. I no longer believed in political freedom without the content of economic liberation and social justice. But I had also realized that intellectual freedom, freedom from the bondage of all tradition and authority, was the condition for any effective struggle for social emancipation. Now, these words were going to guide the future work of M. N. Roy. In Russia, Moscow, Second Comintern, that means Second Communist International, was held between 23rd July to 7th August 1920 in Leningrad. That was in 1920. Communist Party of India was also formed by Roy at the suggestion of Lenin in Tashkent, where he also formed India House and a military school to guide, to train those Indians who were ready to fight the Britishers for their freedom. But as soon as he returned to Moscow in early 1921, he wrote India and Transition in Transition. That was a significant book, which was first ever analysis of the Indian situation from the Marxist point of view. It had a strong influence on the development of the communist movement in India. That book was actually worked as a guide to Indian communists. In 1922, he started his own journal, The Vanguard, and at that time he was going between Germany and France in search of people who would work as volunteers for the Indian freedom. He asserted the right of independent thinking, and ultimately, because of that, he was out of the Comintern in 1929, 13th of December. That was after the death of Lenin. Now, ultimately, he returned to India via Karachi as Dr. Mahmood by the end of December 1930. He was arrested in Bombay on 21st of July 1931 after about 7 months of his return to Mumbai. During these 7 months, he moved about in Bombay and some parts of UP, met many congressmen and trade union leaders including Jawaharlal Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel, N.M. Joshi, B.R. Ambedkar, etc. He also attended the Karachi Congress session, met Subhash Chandra Bose, and discussed with Nehru, uh, the basic concepts of the now famous Karachi resolution. Most important thing that he did before his arrest was the setting up of the Roy Group in Bombay and a few other places. He had returned to India as a full-fledged communist. During his prison days, he also continued to out, smuggle out letters and articles which guided his followers outside. He also wrote about 9,000 pages of his ideas on various issues, some of which were published when he came out with that material in the form of books like Fascism, Materialism, Historical Role of Islam, Ideals of Indian Womanhood. A part of those notes are still unpublished. It consists of Roy's writings on philosophical consequences of modern science. In April 1937, he started a weekly magazine named Independent India. On the question of support to war cause of Britain, which was opposed by the Congress, on which Roy left the Congress, he wrote, "If fascism wins," these are very important words, "if fascism wins, not only will the world go to dogs, but together with the world, India will sink into barbarism. Therefore, not only for the freedom of the world of the victims of fascism abroad, but also for the very chances of the eventual success of our own struggle for freedom, we must see that this greatest menace of all freedom is destroyed. A war against fascism was therefore, he argued, a war for Indian freedom and deserved the full support of all Indians. What Roy foretold came true, but was not at all at that time believed by the nationalists. Now, he had full confidence that Britain would become very weak during the World War and would eventually leave the country and India would become a free state. It would be independent. So, keeping in view that India was going to be free very soon, it would need a constitution, he prepared a people's plan. And the thought behind it was political reconstruction was as necessary as economic reconstruction. It was followed by the draft of a constitution of free India, or called draft constitution, released for public discussion in December 1944. The draft visualizes organized democracy as the source of all constitutional authority, the instrument for the exercise of popular sovereignty. After bringing out two newspapers, The Vanguard and The Masses, he brought out The Future of Indian Politics in 1926 and The Revolution and Counter-Revolution in China in 1930, based on his experiences in China. Now, Independent India newspaper as a weekly in April 37 was started and it continued till March 1949. In April 49, the name of that newspaper weekly was changed to The Radical Humanist, which continued till 1970, March 70. After that, from April 70 onwards, it became a monthly magazine and continues uh, as that even today. Now, Roy was an intellectual. He wrote about 40 books, and those books are available at the website of the Indian Renaissance Institute, and they can be downloaded from there. And this is the list of the books he wrote, and they can be downloaded and read from there. And this is the magazine which still continues to be published, and it tries to spread the views of M.N. Roy amongst Indians as well as those who are interested in his views. Now, one important thing that Roy did was to float the idea of, after leaving Marxism, he floated another ideology which is known as radical humanism. Now, the word radical these days means militant, but he did not mean that. Radical humanism was new humanism, and this word radical means scientific attitude, because Roy believed that humanism can really be humanism if it has scientific attitude, scientific thinking, not religious fanaticism, unreason, because they cannot produce human beings who can think freely. Only science gives us the way to reach the truth, and unless we act on scientific basis, we cannot concentrate on the development of human being. That was his idea, and we shall be talking about his ideas in our future videos. I request you to send your suggestions, questions, so that we can discuss them in our future videos. We shall be taking up the ideas of Roy in our future videos and talking about them one by one, so that we can spread his ideas to as many people as possible. Thank you.